Greetings. I'm going to talk a little bit about Vivaldi's Spring section of the Four Seasons. This is just a little excerpt of an excerpt. So, the Four Seasons is four separate pieces that are written all in solo concerto style. And each section has little subsections known as movements. We'll talk about movements a little while down the pike, but this is one excerpt of a small section of Vivaldi's Four Seasons, the spring version. Now, this is something that I suspect is going to be very familiar to a lot of you. If you don't know what you're listening to, I suspect that you will recognize it. This is really a very well-known piece of music that is used in a great many commercials, films, televisions, as backdrops. It's a really sort of Baroque's greatest hits. So what I'd like you to listen for in this, I don't have a great deal to say as we're listening, but there are a couple of things. First of all, this is a solo concerto. So a solo concerto involves a single solo instrumentalist. You'll notice that there is a violinist standing in the middle of a big circle here in this lovely little, whatever this is, I don't know, some little concert hall or chamber or something for people to make music. And anyway, here is the violinist smack in the middle of everybody else. So remember that a solo concerto is a sort of friendly competition or a ensemble music in which there is a soloist who is then being backed up, aided in terms of playing by a full orchestra. So you see the full orchestra behind, and you see the solo instrumentalist standing in the middle. Generally, the solo instrumentalist gets the spotlight. They stand apart from everybody else. And this particular piece of music is going to highlight the solo instrumentalist with all these musicians playing behind him. So we'll watch that for a few minutes. A couple of things to listen for is not only the interplay between the solo instrumentalist and all the supporting musicians in the background, but also the presence of a basso continuo or a bass line. Okay. The bass line is going to be very often played on cello and on harpsichord, and it sounds really mechanical. I'll point it out at a couple of places. The other thing that this piece makes use of is a ritornello, a very famous ritornello. A ritornello is just a refrain, okay? And the refrain is really the catchiest, most memorable part of a piece of music. You know this more contemporarily as probably a verse chorus. The chorus that gets repeated over and over and over again with the same words every time is generally, when you're listening to a piece of popular music, the very first thing that you learn. So you don't know every single verse because the words change, the lyrics change every single time there's a new verse, but the chorus remains the same. You hear it, it gets stuck in your head. It's usually got a really particularly good hook, right, in terms of hearing the same motif, the same music over and over again. It gets stuck in your head, and that is the equivalent, I guess, of a Baroque ritornello. So we'll listen to all of these things. Let's listen for a while and see what we come up with. Okay? Let's see. We'll start at the beginning. So this is the ritornello. Here it's played twice. Second time the ritornello is being played. Right? This whole section is the most familiar part of this very, very famous piece of music. And it keeps coming back this way, right? So here we're going to go away from the ritornello. So now here's the soloist kind of playing, getting back up by a second violinist. Then we're going to end up with sort of, so this piece of music is called The Spring, and the music is describing the spring. There's no such thing as word painting in this because there's no words, but the music is describing the thaw, right? And if you think about the thaw, you think about cascading water. So look, we're in this polyphonic texture here. Ritornello again. Right, that whole section is right? And then here we have more cascading water. Now, when we get to the ritornello again, you notice that in the background, so that is do you notice that there are some very mechanical notes happening on the harpsichord? Listen to the harpsichord, and you also want to notice that the cellos and the basses are doing very little. It's almost mechanical what they're doing, right? They're just basically playing the same chords. So you notice bump, 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 bump. They're done. Of course, I start choosing to demonstrate the basso continuo at a time when there's no basso continuo, it drops out. But let's go back to here's some serious, ornate, technical mastery of right, okay, here. Chord. Do you hear that? Underneath that, you can go back and listen. Whenever you hear anything that's sounding really mechanical, really repetitive, at the bottom, I mean, what a lot of Baroque music tends to do is it gets increasingly busy and ornate and complicated in the melodic areas, right? I mean, this violinist is doing some pretty fancy work here. Here we go. Look at this. Very busy, very complicated. Okay, here comes a lot more polyphony. The melodic parts are super busy. But if you focus on the lowest notes, the most mechanical, repeated notes, what you're going to get is, do you hear that? Chord, 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 chord. It's kind of boring almost, right? And if you think about the basso continuo as just really something that's holding the rest of the ensemble together in the most rote mechanical ways, that is all you really need to understand about the basso continuo, right? So in this particular piece, you have the demonstration of what a concerto, what a solo concerto is, but then also the basso continuo and the ritornello. I hope that's clear. And I hope that you enjoyed that piece of music. I would imagine that you recognize it, but even if you didn't, believe me, now that you've heard it, you're going to hear it again. Take care.